start these, these to share these challenges and this acknowledgement from different cities. I think that Marta, the person who contacted you, told you before.
Yes, you did.
And and we're very pleased to have you here, and also Dr. Mutabazi. Aquí. Vale. Hola, Marta.
Hola, encantada.
Hola, hola Marta.
Hi, everyone.
Marta, li estava preguntant a Leila si vosaltres volíeu fer una petitíssima o una breu introducció del projecte i després comencem, o com ho volíeu fer?
Sí, potser sí, però no gaire, no ens extendrem gaire. No, ja ho faig jo mateixa, o ella, si vols, si ho fem plegades, si vols afegir alguna cosa. Però res, 10 minuts com a molt màxim, vull dir, només explicar una mica de què es tracta.
Perfecte.
I ja està. No sé si de cas esperem 5 minutets més com a mínim.
Sí, perquè crec que un dels ponents tenia problemes de connexió.
Vale, perfecte. Doncs
I
mirem.
s'està desconnectant i connectant. Jo vaig mirant les sales d'espera
Vale.
i vaig...
D'acord.
I en principi hi havia una persona que havia demanat externa de ser oient, però bueno, si no es connecta, doncs tirem endavant també.
Vale, perfecte.
So, Arthur, while Dr. Mutabazi is connecting, we're going to, for the meeting today, we're going to do a little introduction first about all the project, okay, with the different cities that we are doing this project. Then I'm going to introduce this session, your intervention and the other intervention of Dr. Mutabazi. I'm going to do a briefly context and situation about the city of Kampala, and then it will be your turn, okay? I think that you will have about 20 minutes, more or less, if I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that will be, and then after that 20 minutes and the 20 minutes of the other speaker, we'll have a discussion, a moment for, some questions, to exchange opinions. So that will be.
Okay. That's perfect.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I Víctor, ella no sé si s'havia de connectar algú de AMB, crec que no, no?
Crec que no, em van dir.
Vale.
No,
Doncs,
no.
doncs fem.
El que sí que estem gravant la sessió i aleshores després la tindran disponible.
Perfecte, jo prendré també algunes notes que... Bueno, fem si vols entre les dues, Eina.
No, la presentació te la deixo fer tu totalment.
Vale, no,
Perquè...
dic lo de prendre algunes notes sobre el de la...
Ah, no, sí, no et preocupis que jo també vaig prenent notes per després fer el posterior informe aquest que demanava també l'Albert.
Per això, vale, merci. Doncs espero quan em digueu també.
A veure.
Eila, crec que l'altre ponent està tenint problemes de connexió, perquè s'ha connectat i desconnectat un parell de vegades.
Sí.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, this is Mutabazi from Kampala, Uganda. I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to be here. I don't know whether my video,
We're seeing you now, okay.
yes, a bit not so well lit,
No
but
problem, no problem.
I'm very glad to be here. I'm very glad to be part of this discussion that is so important and very dear to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We are pleased to. We are waiting a few minutes, not for everyone to be here to start, and then we will start the dialogue of this space, okay?
Que si vols, Víctor, anem començant
Sí?
i quan se vagi afegint gent els vaig agregant.
Val, d'acord, doncs, bueno, no sé si voleu fer aquesta petita presentació primer per tothom o per ells o vaig tirant jo, a mi com em digueu, eh?
Si vols faig la presentació sí, breument i ja us donem, si
D'acord.
de cas, la paraula. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here which is the first session of this series of webinars on mobility with a gender perspective in several African cities. It is part of a project named Knowledge Alliances for Urban and Peri-Urban Mobility with Gender Perspective. It is an initiative held from Barcelona, from the Centre d'Estudis Africans Interculturals, the African and Intercultural Center of Studies, and with the funding of AMB, the Metropolitan Area of Barcelona, which is like the institution in charge of mobility and infrastructural governance here in Barcelona and all the metropolitan area. And this is an initiative to create the spaces for dialogue and collaboration between different local African and Catalan actors on urban policies and urbanization process of cities and great metropolis and intermediate African cities. The main objective is to join academic and non-academic actors and to increase the democratic governance of the cities involved in this project through the development of municipal rights, focus on the possible role of women as agents, both as agents and users, as protectors, and in this new participatory transport proposal. So there will be 3 main seminars focused on 3 main African cities of 3 different countries, 3 different contexts. This first one, it's Kampala, Uganda. Second one will be Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. So 2 main great cities, great metropolis. And then the third one focused on Ziguinchor. It's intermediate city, medium city in Senegal. And the idea is that these webinars will be open work meetings with at least 1 local academic expert and one local agent beyond academia and beyond university. It's not only a scholar, there are not only scholarly meetings, and the idea is to work on these topics, the gender mobility, but with focusing on gender perspective, this role of women, both as users, of course, but also as actors, as agents for possible change and for making a difference in urban policies. So the idea also is to that these 3 webinars work as preparatory sessions in order to prepare maybe a panel for the next Iberian Conference of African Studies that will be held also in Barcelona in January 25. We will give you some more information about this. The call is just call for panels is just open, and it will be great to follow all these 3 webinars and to take this conference, this Iberian Conference on African Studies as a milestone for this collaboration program. So the floor is yours, Victor. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for following this first session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marta, for the introduction. Welcome everyone again. Thank you for being here today. We're very pleased to have you in this first webinar of this project funded by the Metropolitan Area of Barcelona. And first of all, I would like to thank you to the Center African Studies, the University of Barcelona, and Marta specifically, to think about Kampala and to think about Kampala as a city to be included, to be part of this project, because Kampala is not a city well known here in Barcelona or in our territory, but it is one of the greatest cities in East Africa. Not talking about only about population, because if we compare Kampala with other big cities in East Africa, we are not talking about the biggest city of the area, but in terms of when we talk about as an epicenter of economics, politics, students, music, etc., it is one of these epicenters. So I'm very pleased to be part of this dialogue. And let me introduce first the 2 persons that we have the opportunity to learn from today. First of all, we have Dr. and Professor Arthur Akanga from Makerere University and Dr. Sam Stewart Mutabazi from the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. Thank you both for being here today. Dr. Arthur Akanga is a researcher and tutor under Makerere University Department of Geomatics and Land Management. And he defines himself as a public transport and non-motorized transport researcher and enthusiast. And under this Makerere University Department of Geomatics and Land Management, he has carried out research on non-motorized transport in Kampala. On the other hand, we have also Dr. Mutabazi, who has a PhD in transportation planning from Selinus University from Ragusa, Sicily, and Masters of Science in Urban Management and Development from Erasmus University of Rotterdam, and who nowadays is the Executive Director of Uganda Road Sector Support Initiative, and also a senior lecturer at the Eastern and Southern Africa Management Institute, where he teaches transport policy and planning. And I think that it's important to emphasize also that he has worked on projects on gender and transport in Netherlands and in Uganda, and has also worked on a project with the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group on gender budgeting and transport in Uganda. So the idea is that both of you will have about 20 minutes to share your thoughts and ideas, and then we'll have that open discussion, if it's okay with you, okay? And we're going to start with Professor Akanga and then Dr. Mutabazi. But before that, as I told you before, let me introduce you just briefly the context and the area, what we're talking about today, because well, later the speakers, of course, will exchange with all of us their acknowledgement and experience more specifically. But just to have a picture before we start for those people who are not familiar with that city and region. As I told you before, Kampala, we have to say that is a city that is an epicenter of political, cultural, musical, economic, and student world in East Africa. We can compare Kampala in terms of population with other cities like, I don't know, maybe Nairobi or Dar es Salaam, for example. But in terms of the lived city, it's a city with a vibrant atmosphere and with a lot of movement, displacements, and general mobility. And well, during the day, the city really bustles with all these people who are in transit from outside to inside with internal movements, or from inside to outside. So we can say that Kampala, in terms of mobility, is a city where thousands of people come and go every day using public transport, informal transport, individual transport also, and mainly, if I'm not wrong, using two different systems or options that we can identify now. One of them is what we call the minibuses taxis, or just taxis, or matatus, more commonly known, that according to the Kampala City Council Authority, there were 21,000 taxis in Kampala in 2018. Those are the latest numbers that I have. And on the other hand, we have these systems of motorbike taxis, commonly known as boda boda, of which the Kampala City Council Authority says there were over 200,000 boda bodas, including the unregistered bikes, operating during the 2018 year. So as we can see, like many African cities or other cities around the world, Kampala relies on this informal system to provide the residents with much needed connectivity to opportunities. So Kampala is a city with a large constant movement of people in transit whose lives require this movement and who depend on the proper functioning of these transport systems. So with this brief introduction, I don't want to talk more. I think it's time to give way to the first of the speakers, Professor and Dr. Arthur Akanga from the Makerere University, who is going to introduce us to the challenges that the city has in terms of congestion, public transport, that Kampala faces today, but also propositions to expand this public transport system, including new ways of moving, and with the need for these policies to include gender sensitivity strategies. So it is your turn, Dr. and Professor Arthur Akanga from the Makerere University. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Victor. And again, thank you to your team for inviting me and thinking about Makerere University. I will just add on to where you stopped. You said Kampala is a vibrant city. It's a very beautiful, vibrant city. It is hilly, quite hilly, and mostly sunny. And we'll see how this leads into the transport modes we have. So Kampala is both the administrative and the commercial capital of Uganda. That being the center of, basically it's the center of everything in this country. So very many people come in during the day, and then in the evenings they leave to get out of Kampala. As of the last count, that was last year, we had 4 million people coming into Uganda, into Kampala during the day. And in the evenings, that number falls to 1.5 million people only. They mainly come into Kampala, as I said earlier, because it's the administrative capital. So most of them have come to work. It's also the commercial capital. Most of them have come to trade. In the evening, they get out of Kampala to go to where they reside, to suburbs out of Kampala. The roads, the Kampala roads are in a fairly good condition, with funds from the government of Uganda, from the World Bank, from African Development Bank, and other development partners. Some roads have been rehabilitated and made wider, and pedestrian walkways have been provided to 2, plus we have a number of signalized intersections. About the modes of transport used in Kampala, the modes I talked about, yes, we have minibus taxis, and we also have motorcycle taxis called bodas that are very popular. Ordinarily, the bodas should be used as for the last mile, either the last mile to home or the last mile to work. But increasingly, we've seen people using them for entire journeys. Somebody uses a boda from home for 15 kilometers all the way to work. So in addition to the minibus taxis and the bodas, we also have a train system that only serves the eastern part of Kampala. For a few months now, it's not been running because it's the railway line is being rehabilitated. But it's proven to be popular for the people that stay in the eastern part of Kampala where it works. It is quite cheap and quite efficient. It's only run during the morning peak hours and the evening peak hours. Then we also have a public bus system that is privately run. It's not run by the city authority, so it has to fight for road space with minibus taxis and the motorcycle taxis. In a few places, we also have bicycle taxis that are used by people that cannot afford the motorcycle taxis. If I'm talking about the infrastructure, I had already hinted about the roads. Some are in fairly good condition. They are signalized intersections, but the biggest problem is that these roads are mainly made for cars. They have not been planned to be used by bodas or non-motorized transport like bicycles. Then for the older roads, they are quite narrow and the number of vehicles has gone up. So they are always clogged at peak hours. When it comes to the motorcycle taxis, the bodas, because most of them are not regulated. We have a few that can be hailed using an app. We have Uber Boda, we have Safe Boda. You can call one to pick you up using an app. So those are regulated and they are quite popular with women, especially in the evening, because they are safe. If anything happens to you, somebody can track your movement, which boda you hailed, where it went. So women like using Safe Boda or any motorcycle taxi that can be hailed using an app. So in addition to the problem I mentioned with infrastructure, most of the transport nodes are not fully multimodal. We have 6 taxi parks within Kampala. But then within these taxi parks, you'll find that there is no space for buses. The train does not stop anywhere near a taxi park. So you'll only find a taxi park, and next to it, there are probably boda stages. The central train station is far from any taxi park. So that's a problem there. Then because the motorcycle taxis have become quite many and most of them are not regulated, they are usually involved in accidents. Then, as I said, that most of the new roads that have been refurbished have come with pedestrian walkways, and a few roads have non-motorized transport corridors. This is very good, but it is not sufficient because most of these walkways either start from or end at a highway. So they are not connected, they're just in segments within town. But the city authorities have a plan to make sure that these walkways are all comprehensive and they form a whole system that can be basically set up all over Kampala. So when I come to possible solutions or interventions to some of the problems I've already mentioned about basically having a comprehensive non-motorized network that is basically all over town. we've carried out research as Makerere University together with the city authorities, just trying to see where to put these walkways. We've also done the same for non-motorized networks, bicycles. Where should we put the bicycle paths? What's interesting is that in the previous research we've carried out, where our analysis shows that the non-motorized transport routes should be put, the users for the non-motorized transport do not want to use those places because either they are very far and they are not direct, they don't directly connect origins and destinations. They are far off in the few green spaces that are left. But we've also looked at segregating non-motorized spaces. Right now, our roads have a mixture of all modes. You'll find motorcycle taxis, you'll find bicycle taxis, public buses, taxis, minibuses, all the same road. But if we can get space and segregate their routes, it would be quite helpful. And then plans are in place to decongest the city and have the minibus taxis not getting into the center of the city. If the minibus taxis can end only at the fringes of the city, then we can have a quasi-BRT, a quasi-bus rapid transit system within the city. But as long as we still have taxis and motorbikes getting into the town, we don't have space to run a quasi-BRT system. About the gender perspective, I've already hinted on how women feel safer using a motorcycle taxi that has been hailed using an app because it is trackable. Most of our transport, basically modes, are run by men. The women only run small shops and kiosks in the nodes, the taxi parks, and the taxi stages. When it comes to the borders that are hailed, the motorcycle taxis hailed by apps, there are few. As of the last count, out of 800 border riders, there were only 6 that were female. That was of the last count. So yeah, Victor, for now, that is my submission.
Thank you very much, Arthur. We're going to keep the questions for the discussion later. Okay, I wrote down some ideas for make some questions and to talk about, and then we pass the ball to the next speaker, Dr. Mutabazi. It is your turn. You have the same minutes as your colleague, and we'll be pleased to hear you. Thank you very much. You have your microphone on mute.
Okay. Oh, hello. You can hear me now? Okay. Thank you, Victor, and thank you, Martha, for this, and thank you for getting in touch. A very exciting topic for me because this is what I live for. And how is Barcelona? I think great city I've had. I didn't go there when I was in Europe, but I knew that it had a lot of sand. Hopefully I will visit sometime. Thank you so much again for speaking about Kampala. Kampala is very vibrant indeed, and sometimes it's referred to as the entertainment city of East Africa. Over the weekend, people gather from Nairobi, from Kigali, from Dar es Salaam, some from Tanzania, to come, and it's a city that never sleeps. People like to drink all the way the night, especially the weekends and other big days. So it's a very, very vibrant city. Maybe where I want to deviate a bit from Professor Arthur is I think the infrastructure, the transport infrastructure in Kampala is really, really wanting. even compared to the East African region itself. If you compare Nairobi or Dar es Salaam or any other, some of those cities in the same league, because the transport infrastructure that is in place, most of it, especially for the real city, the inner city, is pre-colonial or colonial time. And so you have had a lot of, most of it has been dilapidated, and to revive it has taken quite a long time. And I think government somehow has been overstretched in terms of how much resources it can commit to revamp the transport system in the country. So the transport is really not up to what you'd expect, even by the African standards, the transportation, the transport infrastructure in the capital, Kampala. Now, related to that, you have the transport planning. Transport planning, I think, is still in its infancy. You have, because of several reasons, transport planning, just like even if it was in Spain or in any part of Europe, is very complicated. And it becomes even more complicated when you have when you don't have full control of land rights. The Constitution of Uganda guarantees that the right to own land is vested in the individuals. So if you have land, it's yours. Though government is trying to come up with an amendment to say we can acquire land, or we can compulsorily acquire land for infrastructure development in the best interest of the country, I think it's still a long way. So people, one of the biggest challenges in terms of transport planning is access to land on which to build the roads. So you have sometimes people who overprice their land. You find a project which would have been much cheaper overshoots in terms of budget because of the compensation to compensate the land. And that's a very big problem. So accordingly, when there's need for transportation planning, where roads ought to pass, you may find that people may, the government runs into over and above the expenses it would have had. But also some people have deliberately refused land, projects, especially those which are going to touch on to take a big chunk of their land. But also it's important for us to note that there have been a few, and specifically actually there was a project which is a road network connecting off Entebbe Road, the old Kampala Entebbe Road, where people voluntarily gave up their land because they knew that the road which was going to be built was for their own benefit. And that was quite important. It had so many researchers, so many people applauded it, and authorities said if most people can copy from the same to have land, people giving out land voluntarily without being compensated, because after all, it's in their own best interest. So the transport planning is still low, and which affects the whole transportation system. Now, the BRT, Arthur has talked about the different types of transport. I don't want to go into all those. The common one, of course, is Matatu, the 14-seater taxi. We have taxi parks, and possibly if you ever get to Kampala, you need to visit the old taxi park, which is so jammed up with taxis. And sometimes for most visitors who come to Kampala, they wonder how a taxi can maneuver from that sort of informal arrangement of a taxi but they actually do. And so you have different taxis, but they are all, taxi parks, but they are all full. Now you have some buses are beginning to come on board, large buses. The major modern one is called Tondeka bus, very modern, manufactured. I think there is some company here owned by government, which is the one manufacturing those buses. And the buses are brand new, sophisticated. They have Wi-Fi. I think for now they're operating about 10 buses, which ply along the main road. They go through the ring of the city, into the city and outside. And they have proved to be very popular among especially the elites. They are also cheaper, and they are becoming much more popular, but they are good. The taxis are owned by individuals, but government has come up with a program copying from Nairobi. Nairobi has came up with a project where individuals who own taxis were supposed to pull together and buy bigger buses if they can. Now that pilot project has been tried here, and there was a bus company. The taxis pooled their resources together and bought some buses. Although most of those buses are really old and not as fancy as the ones like the ones I have mentioned, which is Tondeka. Now, the other challenge maybe which I can talk about, which is somehow affects transport, is the congestion. Kampala is quite congested. Originally, Kampala was called the city of 7 hills. And that was the original city during pre-colonial times, but now it has expanded beyond the 7 hills, and it goes way beyond to about 20 kilometers away, fully built up area. And this has an effect in terms of transport, but also the inner city, the CBD, remains too congested because you have all the key activities, as Etta has said, administration, commercial, and otherwise. The other key issue maybe to note that affects transport is flooding. Kampala, yes, has a lot of hills, but there are some low-lying areas which are prone to flooding. And because we receive a lot of rain, when it rains, the downtown part of Kampala normally floods and it affects the roads. There are some times when you find the roads, the water is so high that it affects the smaller cars, including the taxis. And that means that there is a hiking of transport fares because it's the operators want to make quick money out of that situation. So that's the general overview of transport in Kampala. Now the issue about the other transport system that Arthur could have looked at could be tuk-tuku. I don't know whether you know tuk-tuku. It is a 3-wheeler. Not so common, but it's in some specific areas. So a place, for instance, called Kisenyi, mainly liked by people of Somali origin, Somalia. That area is known for Somalia, the people who originated from Somalia, and they like it so much. So it's mainly in that area, but I'm not very sure, maybe research needs to be done. Why? You can't find it in other places except that particular area and just a few others. It hasn't caught up with other areas. The other issue is about NMT, non-motorized transport. I think we haven't, as government and individuals, we haven't really done much in terms of promoting non-motorized transport, including walking and bicycles. There have been some trials, especially there was one, I think, supported by World Bank, where a road that cuts across from one end of the city through downtown up to the other part. It's about 5.5 kilometers. It's called Namilembe Ruum Street, was turned into NMT. And the road was blocked. They tried to say there's no access for cars, but I think they left some lanes which were big enough, and now they are clogged by taxis. The taxis have insisted to continue going into that area, even when it was originally planned that they shouldn't access that area. So I think people still have hangover. The taxis have to go and remove and access that really downtown, which is very clogged. If you go there with a car, you may take about 3 or 4 hours without coming out because it is very clogged. But it looks beautiful. It looks quite good. They planted some trees. You can imagine a downtown place. They put some walking places. They put some benches for sitting. It was quite good, and that was good. But in terms of the other parts of the city, the NMT hasn't really worked as efficiently. You have very few areas where people can walk, but even when they are done, they are not so done so well to ensure that people don't, it's exclusively for instance, for either bikes or walking. No wonder majority of people, the pedestrians are the ones who get involved in accident most in Kampala. Actually, statistics show overall, Uganda loses about 3,500 people in accidents. And of these, more than half of the people who die in accidents are from Kampala metropolitan area, Kampala and the surrounding areas, because it has the biggest number of both. So NMT is not catered for, and therefore, which means that there are more people likely to die because the infrastructure for NMT is not adequate or is not available. If you are walking on the pavement, you need to be careful to look on your shoulders. You need to be careful. Otherwise, you may be run over by a car or by a boda boda. Boda bodas can easily move onto the pavements where the people are supposed to walk. And so that means that you have to be very careful. The other project which I earlier talked about World Bank, there was just one small area which was piloted. It's in a place called Kololo for bicycles, and it was painted green, but it's very small. And someone was joking that if you want to ride a bicycle in Kampala, wherever you are, you may be 18 kilometers away, you have to move to that particular area, which is about half a kilometer, to ride your bicycle. Otherwise, there's no any other place in Kampala where you can ride your bicycle safely. And so when that place was made, some people said we need to increase that space. We need to plan for bicycles. We need to plan for people walking than planning for cars. No one, because it's even cheaper, it's healthier, it's better. But we haven't started planning for those, for NMT. NMT is still a very big problem in Kampala. Majority of people in Kampala walk, indeed, and some people walk as much as 15 kilometers to work and back. Because of several reasons, of course, mostly because they lack the money, but also maybe sometimes you find the transport is inadequate. Especially during peak hours, you may find the taxis are full. You may not even get a chance to move in a taxi or to move to have any transport system. So you have so many people dying in road accidents, and you also have boda bodas. At the National Referral Hospital, statistics indicate at least 5 bodabodas are reported into that casualty wing of people who have been engaged in accidents at Mulago. And that's also is because of poor transport system. I want to highlight what Arthur talked about, the rail transport, which was the highlight, I think, introduced about 2015. Moving in the eastern part of the city from a place called Namamve all the way to the city center. Because of the popularity, that train became very popular, and because it was carrying a lot of people, and it is always full to capacity, always packed. It operates 2 times in the morning and 2 times in the evening, bringing people into the city in the morning at around 7 and taking them out at around 5 or 5:30 up to 6, 2 times. And it was popular, but it's not, sometimes it operates like right now, as he rightly says, it's off. But it is one of the key projects that had been done that really helped to transport people from that end of the city. And government had plans to extend that to different parts of the city with the light rail transport. I don't know whether my time is how my time is moving, but I want to quickly speak about the gender perspective. The women, of course, women have special needs in transport, and I'll highlight one of the issues that are really, maybe if you like, interesting. There was a cartoon in one of the newspapers here depicting on that Kampala-Entebbe road, women jumping over the rail to cross over to the other side because there are no places for crossing. There are no safe zones for crossing. And some of these women would be with skirts and with dresses. So the cartoon depicted the women trying to jump over the rail with showing their undergarments. And that tells you about the problem. Possibly if you're a man and you're putting on a trouser, it's easier to jump over the rail and cross over to the other side. But this could not happen. Now, the women also have different mobility patterns, and these are normally not taken care of. Sometimes you find women want to travel maybe after preparing their families, maybe at 10 or 9 o'clock. And you find the taxis at that time are fewer. There are fewer taxis, transport methods that can move them. You have normally when they are trying to move at that particular time, the taxi is not, the transport is not reliable. The other issue maybe of importance for women is that the point which Arthur talked about briefly was about women involvement in transport service itself. You have women as drivers. You also have women as conductors. I don't know whether conductors is the right word. The women who close the door of the taxi or who collect money from the taxi. And there are fewer women drivers. There are a little bit more women conductors. But what has been observed is that the taxis that are operated by women, either as conductors or as drivers, are very popular with commuters. Possibly because they are safer, but also maybe because it's an uncommon sight. A taxi that is driven by a woman is more likely to get more passengers faster and fill up faster than one that is operated by men. And we've seen them all over Kampala. The ones which ply the routes and have women in them as operators tend to have tend to be more popular compared to women. And maybe we need to do some study about that. Why is it that the taxis operated by women are more popular than those that are operated by men? You've talked about the statistics about matatus, 200. This number keeps fluctuating. Sometimes it has gone up to 400. Now, the borders, the number could be well beyond this. It's much more than this, because the border has become almost the unofficial. Is it the unofficial or the official transport system in Uganda? If you want to move to any place without delay, you need to jump on one and it will take you. The good thing is that they are what Arthur talked about, the safe border, which according to some statistics, they are safer, as the name suggests, and you can't board one without a helmet. For instance, they drive at a certain speed. They can come and pick you in places where they are operating, and so they are there. But the numbers keep fluctuating. You have so many borders could go up to. Some statistics have indicated they are up to around 600,000 borders in Kampala metropolitan area. So the number, there was some time back, ACCA tried to do a count, but I'm not sure whether it was successful because there was some political intervention. So the issue, the way forward, I think. Then the other, before I do the roundup, the women moving on borders also is a problem because they have to move with their legs apart. One, it's in the past it was culturally sensitive for a woman to sit astride the border. A man can do it because they are dressed in a trouser, but a woman sitting on a border with legs apart was considered to be not appropriate. Right now, most women are doing so, but those who still have that the traditional sense normally sit with two legs in one side, and which makes them more vulnerable to accidents, because when the border falls, the chances of them falling the other way and hitting their head with their back of the head first is very high. In fact, there are so many accidents that have been reported with
Oops.
the government to ensure that everyone puts on a helmet when they are.
I think that we have some problem with both of them. No, Arthur is still here. Sorry. Sam, can you hear us? Your picture just went frozen. Well.
Yeah, we lost him.
Well, we'll see if he can reconnect now, okay? But I think that he was also finishing his speech, and when he finishes, when he's back, we're going to have this discussion, okay? I don't know if you have some questions or some, some things to say before the questions, Marta, or you want to just jump it directly to the questions? No? Well, okay, he's here again.
Okay, it has.
Hello
Hello.
again. We lost you for a moment.
Yes, I think it just went off. I'm not quite sure what happened exactly. You can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, so in conclusion, what I wanted to speak about is there's less involvement of women in as stakeholders. Yes, the general public also has less involvement in terms of transport planning, but also in terms of what type of transport people would be interested in. And this connected with this is there is a problem in terms of if you want to, if government has been trying to bring in modern transport systems, unfortunately, if you bring in modern transport system, you are going to displace so many people, render so many youth unemployed. And therefore, government has been very skeptical and not deliberately coming out to displace, for instance, border borders. As I said earlier, if you are going to displace 600,000 people together with their families, and you bring in buses, it means that you are going to render all those people unemployed. Where shall they earn their living? And that's the catch-22 situation that the government finds itself in. Do you want to bring in the better transport system while at the same time, which is going to render so many people jobless? Or do you want to keep people in their jobs doing some job, although it is they are really, the transport system is not efficient? So there have been some forums, some of which have been part, in trying to bring to sanitize the border and the taxi systems. And some of the people I've interacted with have said we are going to have these border and taxi transport systems for a very long time. And it's important for us, therefore, to work with them and agree on how can we work together to deliver the transport system in an informal way, but in a better way. So I think I'll stop at that for now, and hopefully we will.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. And thank you both for your interventions and for your speech. As well, I saw that there has been so many changes when we talk about urbanism and mobility in Uganda these past years. My last time in Uganda it was 5 years ago, so when I come back to Kampala, I will see some big changes in the city and in the urbanism of the capital. But talking about today and about the webinar that we are sharing today, I would like to, I don't know, just to introduce some specific themes that or subjects that we might discuss, referring to your speech, and also if Marta, Ayla, Albert, the other people who is here want to interact and ask for something more specific, I mean this is your space too. Talking about, for example, on the issue on non-motorized transport, Dr. Mutavasi said that, for example, in that the main area that was specifically for example, bikes was an area that was constructed or projected in Kololo, that it's in a very specific area of Kampala. For the ones that who don't know the city, Kololo is, well, I don't know how to define exactly, but it's a neighborhood with maybe the higher income in the city, no? And also is the place where the main embassies or the NGOs are based. So we can see here, for example, maybe a solution that it was more for a specific situation of the city, but not looking maybe to the main situation of Kampala when we talk about non-motorized or specifically bike transport. So what I want to say is that how these, for example, these experiments that started in some specific places of the city can be expanded to the rest of the city to be able to give solutions to the main inhabitants of Kampala. Because, for example, Dr. Mutabazi or Professor Abdurakanga also said there is a challenge when we talk about, for example, for the day of the pedestrians, no? I mean, the walkways and all of these places. So these internal displacements, no? Because this space reserved in Colorado for bikes is for internal displacement. How can be also solved in a in a bigger circle when we talk about all the city? Because I don't know exactly the numbers, but the internal displacements inside Kampala are very huge, and inside the neighbors maybe there is I don't know, a gap there to fill with this approaching for non-motorized vehicles. I'm just giving my vision and reflection of that. I mean, just I think it's an interesting thing to discuss. Feel free if you want to say something.
You, pardon, if you can repeat, yeah. I missed your statement.
Oh, sorry. Well, no, it was just one thought that I had, that comparing the project that they started in Colorado, that it's a very specific area of Kampala with a higher income neighborhood, with a specific population and specific inhabitants compared with all the other neighborhoods in Kampala. I was just wondering how these little scale projects for, for example, for bike transport, no, can be can have a replication in other parts of the city, but not talking about just, for example, for bikes, no? I mean, just for this internal mobility that the city has, and that can be helpful for those parts of the city with a very different environment that Colorado has.
Okay. Yeah, I think building a city and specifically transport systems in the city is like can be equated to an individual's life in terms of building their own lives and infrastructure, houses, etc. And so a city like Kampala, any issues that are, any systems that are added to the transport must be celebrated, however small they are. Because even that half kilometer was a blessing. And therefore, any incremental additions somewhere would be a very big relief to the city. And they can be replicated. I think with some activists, there have been some activists that have been working with government to make sure that these small projects, for instance, there's a lady called Amanda Ngavirano, who's a lecturer at Makerere, but also works with one of the government agencies. And she has been spearheading the bicycle project, where she lends out bicycles. And some of those projects, however small they may be, they may have a ripple effect when the people really recognize that that they are working. If this bicycle lane that was constructed in Kololo could be replicated in some other places, you would see the public perception changing. We still have a hangover of cars. in Uganda and if you like in the whole of Africa. Most of us either grow up thinking that a car is the everyone wants to drive a car when they grow up. And to change that mentality, you need a deliberate attempt by policymakers and leaders to tell people that actually a car is not necessarily the best thing to have in a city. After all, if you have 2 million people in Kampala, if each of them is going to own a car, first of all, they will not have any space to drive them. But secondly, they will lead to a lot of air pollution. So it starts from those small efforts of people appreciating that by riding a bicycle and walking in the city is so good for you as an individual, but also very good for the entire city because it's very efficient and more sustainable. The thing is, I think in future, there needs to be some collaboration for some of the villages or the outlying areas in Kampala to begin getting those modes. Create some spaces where possible, where there can be only, and they must be demarcated well. For instance, the pavement ought to be raised so that the taxi doesn't drive on the walkways. Those small walkways for pedestrians and cyclists ought to be made so that so that people can begin coping. And when you start that small, with time, people begin appreciating them, and you never know. The whole city, you will find you have many biking areas, many places for walking that are safe. Right now, there are so few. Personally, I would want to ride a bicycle in Kampala, but I can't because it is very risky.
Thank you, Dr. Mutabazi. To add on to that, I've picked 3 points. One, building a critical mass of cyclists. And it's good you've talked about Amanda Ngabirano. I work with her at the university. She's also the chairperson of the National Fiscal Planning Board. With her advocacy, we now have a bicycle sharing scheme at Makerere University, and it's very popular with students. So that is what basically I look at as building a critical mass. When these people graduate from the university, they will advocate for spaces for non-motorized transport. And of course, they are the future planners. They are the future planners. So I'm sure in a few years' time, we shall have comprehensive transport corridors for non-motorized transport.
Thank you both for your answers. On the other hand, I think that it's very interesting to talk about a situation or a fact that you both explained, that is the security. For example, when we talk about women in this moment to go to work or to go to their shops, to the kiosk, or during this time of the day that there are fewer, taxis or services in the city. But I think it's interesting to enter a little bit more about how this, for example, gender perspective subject had to be done with a participative, with different actors that are constructing these new, these new solutions for the public transport, informal transport in Kampala. What I mean is, you detected that there is a situation different when we talk about women when they use the informal, formal, official or non-official transports in Kampala, but with different effects and with some issues when we talk about security. And I would like to, just to discuss how has to be this, this table to improve or to try to solve this kind of situations? What kind of situation, I mean, to give a more personalized or better service to women or in Kampala? And also, I want to ask if you can explain a little bit to us, how is I mean, the role, the active role or non-active role of the public institutions in Kampala in that issue? I mean, the Kampala City Council Authority or even the national government. Thank you.
I would like to add a question to this argument, Victor's argument, is that is there any, we talk about a lot about unofficial or informal transport systems, and then about institutions, but is there any informal association or women association? I mean, for my own experience in Ziguinchor in Senegal, is in West Africa, there is women tend to have great a lot of resources and great informal tissue or fabric of relationships between women with to find, I don't know, monies, to find funding, to just to help each other. And is there any informal association which within women can find some to help each other on one side, but that the institution may find there an interlocutor or an actor to speak to when it comes to women mobility and this special issue? I don't know if I have explained myself, but that was my question, just to add to Victor's argument.
Okay, thank you. The Women Association, I am not aware of any women association. The only organization I was aware of was some sort of NGO that was based in Jinja. It was called Women in Transport in Uganda, and I've taken some time. We used to work together on some key issues, but I've taken some time without hearing from them. In terms of an association that is formal or where women can air their issues, I'm not aware. Possibly it could be there, but I'm not very sure that it's available. And maybe it would be very, very important. But I think there are some associations that are available, both in form of NGOs, but also the transport associations themselves. Although they keep changing all the time. For instance, the border borders themselves have associations, and they normally have stages. When you have a stage, you before you can't just come from anywhere, and you begin operating a border. So you must register with their stage, and you're supposed to pay some money. And they have sort of a cooperative, but they also have associations at regional, at national, and I mean at local, regional, and national levels. The same with taxis. The matatus, there are several associations, so many, and they also keep changing. Of course, there are so many conflicts there, but they have several associations, and those are the ones that finally KCCA deals with when in case they want to do some consultations or to involve the stakeholders. In terms of the role of transporters apart from KCCA, one of the key issues to note is that there is less stakeholder consultation, and I think this has come off quite often with KCCA. KCCA normally does a lot of a lot of implementation with less consultations. And this leaves so many people, even when it has some projects that would be deemed very progressive and very good, you find that most people are not aware of them. And this leaves many people with the sour graping. I'll give a quick example. For instance, most women normally they try to vent for their families, and they are on the streets trading all sorts of things, tomatoes or onions or whatever, or these small merchandise. And there has been a lot of uproar on when you find the KCCA enforcement officers confiscating these things and getting these women and bundling them onto the truck, and they take the goods and they take the women and they arrest them. And which is quite, some people think it is inhuman, because these are people who are really trying to look for a survival. But the way they are mistreated, and what is more is that KCCA hasn't come up with clear gazetted places where these women can actually trade. If a woman has the least amount of capital, where would she go? What would she do? Isn't it prudent that KCCA allocates that woman a place, a safe place, where they can easily trade their goods? And so such an issue makes women really very vulnerable. And we've seen there are some two incidences that came and they captured the media, where one woman who had a child, they arrested the child and threw the child onto the pickup and the woman, and they took their merchandise, and finally the child died in the process. And there was a lot of uproar on whether that woman was compensated or not. So the role of, in terms of consultation, for the general consultation and stakeholder engagement, it's still quite low. Leave alone the consultation of women, but even the general public, so that you have a buy-in for the public. The public ought to know that this is what we are doing. KCCA ought to come in and say, this is what we are doing, and we are doing it for this reason, and therefore, we are calling for your support. But that consultation is not really forthcoming. We know that, for instance, one of the funded and they tried to work on it for some years. Actually, it was worked on all the period through COVID, and it was reopened around 2023. And but when they were trying to reconstruct it, there was an abrupt closure. They closed the place and said, we are going to work on this place. But there hadn't been prior arrangements for these people to relocate. There are some businesses, but even the taxis themselves, they didn't have where to operate from, because what is clear is that that old taxi park remains the largest taxi park. So if you are going to any part of the country, especially the metropolitan, you must go to that taxi park. And so when they closed it for renovation, there was no clear plan on where these people were going to operate from. And you found that majority of them were just operating on the road, and the roads were already congested, and this made the situation even worse. So the consultation, in terms of what these people, private individuals could do other than KCCA, is very, very limited.
Thank you very much.
In addition to what he said, you'd asked about the active role of Kampala Capital City Authority or the government of Uganda in transport. When it comes to city transport, at least Kampala Capital City Authority runs the taxi parks. The taxis themselves are privately owned and run. And that's why they really don't have any designated routes. The origin destination is known, but how to get there can change mid-journey. But the taxi parks are run by KCCA. It collects some fees from these taxis. And apart from policy trying to enforcement too, KCCA does some of that. But majorly, this transport system is privately run.
Marta, or
Yeah, I won't like to monopolize the discussion at all, but just another question. Maybe you have already talked about it. It's about prices of its because normally what we see both here, maybe also here in Barcelona, but also in other African cities, at least from our experience, also in Ziguinchor, working on transport and mobility, is that women have less money because, well, they have more other kind of jobs, other most of them or some of them in the informal sector. And when they have to choose the type of transport they use, there is not only this idea or this the of connection between different points of the city or milestone of the city, depending on their mobility patterns, but also the price, if they can afford it or not. When we talk about women dedicated to trading, they have to save money. It means the least they spend on transport, the more they can earn, or the more they can benefit or take bigger amount of money of their courses on this trading. So what about prices, and how is there are they forums or essays to regulate transport prices, or to take some actions on that part, on that sector? Just to also look at prices from a gender perspective, maybe it is interesting. And I think it's not only an issue of African cities, also I mean, we can say also in European cities we have this gap on resources and earnings between men and women that is quite significant in several aspects or several spaces in life, or in daily life. So do you have some information on that, or essays or experiences on positive maybe experiences on that?
What I can say about that, unfortunately, we've not carried out such research, but for the train, when it was still running, and for the public bus system, the prices are set, they are constant. It's for the taxis and the borders where the prices fluctuate. And you've talked about women traders, especially. It's been noted that the women traders usually use the taxis early in the morning before the peak hour when prices are still low. When prices are still low, they go to town, get the merchandise they have to sell, and bring it to their shops very early in the morning. Because for the taxis and the borders, the prices go up with demand. So at peak hours, it's really high. Then it falls at the off-peak hours.
you have your microphone muted.
Sorry. In addition to what Arthur has said, in terms of the costing, definitely a majority of women who are these small-scale traders in Kampala, it's a common sight in Kampala to find these women with their merchandise, and very huge merchandise. Hello. Are we still there?
Yes.
Yes. You can continue.
Okay. Yeah, you find women, especially in the mornings and evenings, having a very big piece of luggage in the middle between the woman as a passenger and the rider, the boda rider, carrying that huge amount, huge parcel, taking it to the market. It can be matoke, it can be anything, things to take to the market. And often the price, as Martha was asking, the price has a big bearing on the business of women, because the matatu has a limited luggage they can carry, especially if it is too bulky. You find the taxis cannot take it. But also taxis are actually discriminative. They don't like carrying those big bulky things because they will delay the person. But even when the women try to use that, you find they are overcharged and they prefer, on top of being slow, because the taxi will easily get caught up in the traffic jam. You find most of them are using the boda. So the very common sight to find a big luggage with the woman on the boda carrying their luggage all the way to the market or outside. But I wanted to, there's one point which I had, which I wanted to also bring to the fore about what Victor had asked, the interventions. There is the problem of the Kampala metropolitan area. You may need to know that Kampala, the boundaries of Kampala city are quite small. Actually, Kampala, in terms of, if you are to take it as a district, is about 190 square kilometers, which is a very small area. Now, beyond the boundaries of Kampala, you have the other districts. For instance, Wakiso, which almost encircles the entire city. It comes from one end of the city to the almost, leaving just a small area. You also have Mukono, which is another district about 30 kilometers away from the city center. And you have Mpiji, and those are the key districts that surround Kampala. Now, you need to know that these cities that surround Kampala are independent administrative units. They determine their own revenues, they determine their own transport arrangements. And there has been a push by government to make sure that the transport and the planning is harmonized across these three entities, the four districts: Kampala, Wakiso, Mukono, and Mpiji. They form the greater Kampala metropolitan area, which forms those bigger districts. And at some point, there was what was called there was a bus service called I forget the name. It closed sometime. Pioneer is a bus, and this bus it was operating, of course, from Kampala, and it was plying the route into Mukono, into Wakiso. And the authorities in these districts said, no, you can't operate here unless, if you operate in these districts, you have to give us part of the money. And this posed a serious problem, first of all, because the bus is supposed to provide a service to, and it shouldn't be knowing the boundaries of the town, where the town stops. It's supposed to pick people to as far as a place as possible. So there was a haggling with the districts. At some point, they would try to say, no, these buses can't operate from this area because this is not Kampala. If they want, they should operate only up to the boundaries of Kampala. And if they were to do that, Kampala being small as it is, it means that Kampala could reach about maybe the farthest end of Kampala could be around average of about 12 kilometers, one end to the other, maximum 15. So and yet there are people to pick from outlying areas. For instance, if you go to Wakiso, and to other areas. And so this issue also needed to be resolved, and up to now it has not been resolved. How does Kampala manage its transport system independent of the surrounding districts? And this issue has not been resolved, but it needs to be tackled because people need to move irrespective of whether they are staying within the boundaries of Kampala or outside. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if Arthur want to add something about that topic, or you want, I mean, Albert has a question in that topic, or you want to introduce another subject? Albert.
Hello, I just wanted to introduce another topic.
Okay, that's fine. Go along with that.
It's a very short question about university students. I would like to know if there is any kind of special transport connecting the whole city with the university campus. I suppose now in Kampala there may be several university campus, but I'm wondering if there is any special transport especially addressed to the university students, or they rely only on the normal public transport they can get, or if they can have their own private transport. Thanks.
Up until 2011, there used to be special taxis going to mainly Makerere University, and they would come, drop students, and then pick students on campus, but that was stopped. Now, taxis can no longer access the university, so students have to use the regular mode that everyone else uses. Plus, the train does not go to the university.
Mm. Okay, thank you. I would like to introduce a question that is maybe related with the latest questions that Marta did, and also with the question that Albert just put in the table, to relate women and children. Because for example, here in Barcelona, when we see children that are going to school, they are normally going with their mothers, using, for example, public transport, buses, subway, etc., even bikes. No, when you see bikes, you have more representations of men, because it's a different kind of transport. In public transport, you can see mostly women with children. And I wanted to ask to you, or just to put in the table that subject to relate or to ask if in transport women often travel with their children, and if they travel together going to school, how they do it normally, or if the children follow another way of moving. I mean, perhaps with private school transport, or just maybe by walk, because the school is usually near to the house family. Just that. Thank you.
It's interesting that you ask that. For the well-to-do families, those that cannot drop their children or pick them from school, they use school shuttles. Then we had incidences where children were going to school using borders, but the Ministry of Education was against that, putting children on borders because they are not safe. So the Ministry of Education was of the view that children should go to schools that are near home. Yeah, I remember it was a controversy a few years back. So for the well-to-do families, they drive their children to school, or they use school shuttles. Yeah.
Yeah, the well-to-do definitely have means of better travel, but it's still very common for children to move on borders, sometimes alone, sometimes you find they're about up to 3 or 4 kids on one border, but sometimes they have an adult who sits at the end of the inside of the border, and the children are in the middle. So it's very common. Of course, then in some other areas, especially in the outlying areas of Kampala, you have children walking for those who have schools that are that are nearby, and that's quite common. Of course, government, as Aka has said, the government was encouraging that children should, as much as possible, attend schools that are close by to avoid moving long distances. Some of the children move by taxis. There's an interesting scenario where children normally sit, it's called, in a taxi, it's called the kameme. In these taxis, I don't know whether, Victor, if you were in Kampala, you must have seen this scenario.
Yes.
Where, yes, on the engine of the taxi inside, the children normally would sit in that area and pay less money. Maybe if a journey is going to cost 500 Uganda shillings, they may pay 200 or something like that, and they arrive. And the fact that they are small, normally you would find some of them again sitting on their laps of their fellow children in order to reduce the cost, because the taxi normally charges according to the seat. So if sometimes you'd find 4 children or 3 children sitting using one seat that would have been used by one person, and therefore they pay the fare of one person, of a person. And that's just trying to maximize or to utilize the little money that their parents would have given them. Then you have the scenario also of children who decide if they are given that money by their parents, they end up not using it, and they try to use it on the way. Instead of using it in the taxi or the border, they instead walk, especially if the journey is not so hard, so long. They walk and use that money for other purposes, either buying mandazi. You know mandazi, Victor? Mandazi is pancakes or whatever, those baked things. So the children, especially children who are born in the city, tend to be what you may call wiser. They use their money sparingly. So sometimes you find they have extra cash. What is given to them by their parents, you find they are not using it, and they end up saving it. But overall, the children still face hurdles in terms of transport. Majority of them, you find that the transport system doesn't favor them. For those who have to be, there are some women, especially parents, who have to walk their children because it's unsafe. And so they have to take them to make sure that they cross the roads safely, to make sure they reach the school, and then they come back to pick them. Some parents pick the children on foot, some of them pick them on borders, some of them actually ride with them. So it's the transport system doesn't still again favor the children.
Thank you. I think that it's interesting to put in a view. I mean, when we talk about transport or mobility inside the cities, to try to look at the city like if you were children. No, I mean, when you are children, when you are a little boy, little girl, you have a perception of your reality very particular. No, and when we try to use those eyes to try to understand how is to be moving in that scenario as a children, it is very interesting to understand how can we improve the environment. This is why I started also asking about some specific or little when I say little, I don't want to be mean, huh? Just little, I mean for space, just little projects like, for example, the Cololo project of bike spaces. That it if it can be replicated in other scenarios like other neighborhoods, because when we see that, for example, children tend to go to the schools near their houses, for example, when we think about this kind of moving of this inside these neighborhoods, it's like a little a little new environment for them that can grow to the main part of the city. So as I understood, in Kampala, most of children travel alone, no, without women, if I understood well. So women, when they travel with, for example, as I don't remember now who explained it, if it was Professor Arthur or Professor Mutabazi, travel, for example, with all the, for all the stuff that they need, for example, for the grocery shops, little kiosks, some markets, no? Or, I mean, inside, for example, taxis. If they are carrying, I mean, like more volume or of stuff like the other passengers.
E- Yeah, I think most of them don't carry a lot of stuff except their bags and books. Majority of them really don't carry a lot of things.
Okay,
But
okay.
there's one interesting bit which I really wanted to know you to know about, although it's not in Kampala. It's in a rural district called Kabale. Kabale is about 400 kilometers from Kampala, and it has a lake, one of the deepest lakes in Africa, called Lake Bunyonyi. And there has been some that lake is very deep, but children cross it every morning and evening with using boats. Children as young as maybe 6 or 10 get onto the boat and with their books and bags, because the schools normally are located across the lake. So they get on a canoe and they move the canoe by themselves. Sometimes you have parents, but many times you have children themselves with the canoe, and they row the boat some kilometers onto the school, and they study in the evening. They row the boat again and cross over back home. And this has been quite interesting. Of course, there has been some few accidents where they drown, especially when the lake is violent. But it tells you about the challenges, the different challenges. Girls and boys row the boat across the lake onto the other side to study, and they come back in the evening. Sometimes it becomes violent, and you have children dying in the lake. I just wanted to highlight that as one of the key issues, although it's not in Kampala.
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't know if there are some other doubts, Marta, or...
No, I was just asking if there is no other questions. We can close up this first session.
Okay, so thank you very much, all of you, for coming today, especially to Dr. and Professor Arthur Akanga and Dr. Mutabazi. This is, as Marta explained in the beginning, this is the first session, so this is a project that it will continue with 2 other sessions, but we have now both contacts, we know each other, and this is like a first step to increase these collaborations between our city, Barcelona, and other cities, no, because Ayla is not from Barcelona. Alberto's Alberta, I think that he lives outside of Barcelona, me too. But we live near the Barcelona and different cities of Africa. Today, especially focused in Kampala. And I think it was a session, a webinar where we could understand better the picture of how does it mean to move inside Kampala, outside from Kampala to inside of Kampala, the mobility inside the city during the day, and trying to focus in all of these aspects about the gender perspective and gender sensitive to try to have this well painted picture for today. So thank you very much again. We'll keep in touch, and that's all. Okay.
Thank you. Just to add that you are invited to follow the rest of seminars. The next one will be focused on Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. It will be next Tuesday on 16 April. Probably we'll still fixing the last details, but it will be at 11 o'clock in the morning, Barcelona time too. So you're invited, and if we prepare some report on this first session, it will be great to have your feedback too, and we keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hope you'll share the link.
Yes, of course.
Will do.
I gràcies, Ayla, per tota la feina, també. Thank you very much.
No, gràcies a vosaltres per la moderació i pel contingut tan interessant.
Gràcies a tothom.
Thank you and good night.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.